Hi there, in this video I'll be showing you how to get started using Markdown, which is a popular way to format text into a structured and easy to read format without having to use a lot of tags that can make a document difficult to read. I'll be covering what Markdown is, some typical use cases, and demonstrating the most commonly used Markdown syntax such as headers, paragraphs, lists, images and more. Let's begin by taking a look at what Markdown actually is. So what is Markdown? Markdown is a simple way to take plain text and apply formatting and structure without having to fill a document with a load of tags, such as HTML tags, that bloat the document and can make it difficult to read for people that don't know HTML. Now, what are some of the use cases for Markdown? It can be used for a variety of things, such as note-taking, blogging, AI skills for an agent, and documentation, especially for software that goes onto a site like GitHub. Also, most of the AI tools, such as Google Gemini, will allow you to copy out a response to a prompt which will be formatted in Markdown. So I've covered the use cases for Markdown, but how is Markdown actually used? Well, Markdown is used to format a document, as I previously mentioned. That document is then uploaded to a website, such as GitHub or a blog site for example, which then puts the file through what is called a Markdown processor. A Markdown processor is kind of a translator that takes the Markdown file and translates it into HTML. This is then shown in your web browser as a standard HTML web page. So how do you create Markdown files? Well, to create and edit Markdown files, you need a tool that can edit Markdown files, of which there are plenty out there. If you wanted to, you could use something as simple as Notepad on Windows or any basic text editor, but they are basic in terms of features. Some of the more popular Markdown editing tools include Scrivener, Notion, Obsidian, VS Code and Jupyter Notebooks, just to name a few. Of the examples mentioned, Scrivener is mainly used for complex documents and book writing. Obsidian and Notion are mainly for note-taking and creating knowledge repositories, whereas VS Code is targeted more at developers and Jupyter Notebooks are for people who work with data, such as data analysts and data scientists. There are other tools on the market, so feel free to have a look around and try some out to see which one works for you. For this video, I'll be using VS Code. Now, VS Code for Markdown is pretty basic when you first install it, so some extensions will make working with Markdown files much easier. The extensions I have installed include Markdown All-in-One. This does most of the IntelliSense for Markdown, along with auto formatting and creating a table of contents. It does more stuff, but this is what I mainly use it for. Next, I've got Markdown Lint. This provides a Markdown rule checker to let you know if your Markdown doesn't conform to certain rules. For example, if I leave an empty space at the end of a line, it will pick up on that and indicate in the Problems panel in VS Code. In addition to those, I have some others installed that aren't specific to Markdown but are useful for it. These include Code Spell Checker, Character Count, and Word Count. These are all pretty self-explanatory as to what they do. The last one I've got is VS Code PDF, which allows you to view PDF files in VS Code. With that covered, let's get started by creating an empty Markdown file. This is done by simply creating a new file and giving it a file extension of .md. You can see in VS Code that it has detected the file type as Markdown. The file can be named whatever you want, unless the site you're putting it on requires a particular name to be used. For example, the default file name for a GitHub repository documentation page is README.md, with README being in uppercase. I've also got an image in this folder that I'll be adding later on. So let's start building out the Markdown, beginning with the heading of this document. I'll first paste in some text that I'll be setting as headers for this document. So the first line here is the title for this document, which is basically the first heading in Markdown. You can see that this first line's got some green squiggly line underneath it. If I hover over it, it's just the linting telling me that the first line in a file should be a top level heading. To create a heading, you put a number of hashes before the text, followed by a space. The number of hashes determines the heading level. For example, the title heading would have one hash followed by a space in front of the text. If you didn't put the space between the hash and the text, it would not show as a heading. The next level heading down, which is Introduction, will have two hashes followed by a space before the text. A third level would use 3 hashes, and so on for each level. There is a maximum cap of 6 headings in Markdown, so bear that in mind. I'll preview this document by pressing Command, Shift and V on a Mac or Ctrl Shift V on Windows or Linux. I've split it to the right so we can keep both open so we can see what the Markdown document looks like and what the preview looks like. Now I did mention that there's 6 level headings that you can use, and I've got a 7th one here that I just want to show an example of what happens after you go after 6. So I'm just going to add 7 hashes and a space. And if I press the space, that should convert to a header in the preview, but because it's beyond 6, it just treats it as normal text. So 6 levels is the maximum you can do. Now the color coding in this document here, so you can see it's like a shade of pink, that's just set by the theme that I'm using for VS Code. Typically, the Markdown processor or website will determine what colors any text will be shown in. Now, let's just add some text that will make up our paragraphs and sentences. To do that, just go under one of the headings and make sure to put an empty line below it and then put whatever text you want. I'm going to paste in some text just below the introduction. And then I'm going to get rid of this one down here because I don't need it. I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit. Now there's nothing else you need to do for standard text. All you do is just put whatever text you want in. There's no tags required. You can do whatever you want at that point. The only rules I've seen are that you shouldn't start a sentence or paragraph with a tab, and make sure there's an empty line both before and after your paragraphs and sentences. Also, don't leave an empty space at the end of a line. Now let's add some formatting to some of this text, starting with bolding some of it. To do that, you need to put 2 asterisks at the start of the text you want to bold and then 2 more at the end. I'll take the word this and I'll put 2 at the beginning of it and then 2 at the end of it. Now in the preview, we can see that this is bolded. If you want to italicize some text, it's very much the same as bolding text, except you just use 1 asterisk at the beginning and 1 at the end. I'll do that for this piece of text here. So 1 star there, 1 star there. You can see that README in the preview is now italicized. If you want to make text both bold and italic, you can do so by using 3 asterisks instead. So I'll take this and I'll just put 2 more. You can see it's now bolded and it's italicized. Now let's move on to underlining text, which is a little bit of a tricky subject as Markdown does not currently natively support doing this. After doing a bit of checking, it seems that this is down to it conflicting with links, which is shown underlined, although this isn't set in stone and it is more on the Markdown processor to make that decision. There is, however, a potential workaround. If your Markdown processor supports HTML tags, you can use either the U or INS HTML tags to wrap the text around that you want to underline. For example, I'll add an INS tag at the beginning of this and a closing INS tag at the end of it. And as you can see in the preview, the word Markdown is now underlined. Now, whilst that worked in this preview, as mentioned before, it's down to the Markdown processor to respect the HTML tags. For example, if I did this and committed and pushed the file to GitHub, the underline will be removed as GitHub typically strips out any HTML tags that you use in a Markdown file. With that covered, let's move on to adding a link to the document. To add a link to a document, there are 2 parts to it. First is the text that you want to show that you click on, which will be contained in angle brackets. Immediately following that will be the URL, which is contained in a set of parentheses. For example, I'll create a link for this. So I'll just put click here, and I'll put that in angle brackets, and I'll put the URL in parentheses. As you can see over here, click here is now a link. If I hover over it, it now appears to be clickable, and if I click it, it'll open the Markdown cheat sheet. Now that links have been covered, let's add an image to this page. They use a similar format to a link, but there are a few differences. First, there's an exclamation mark before the angle brackets. Inside the angle brackets, rather than just some text that would appear on the screen, it's used for the alt text. If you haven't heard of that before, it's used to describe what the image is so that if a person is using a screen reader because they have a visual disability, it can describe what the image is to them. It's also used for search engine optimization, or SEO for short. In the parentheses, you put in the path or the URL for the image you want to use. In this case, the image I want to use is in this folder here. So what I'll do is do a new line here, an exclamation mark, angle brackets, and I'll just put this is an image of a few keys on my keyboard. What I'll then do is just put the path to that image. So it'll be /images/keyboard.jpg. And there's the image in the preview. Now, the image will be shown at whatever size it is, or whatever size the Markdown processor is set to. You can't alter the size of it in Markdown alone. You could use an HTML image tag instead, but again, if the Markdown processor removes HTML tags, the image won't appear. Now let's move on to lists. There are two types of lists in Markdown, a numbered or ordered list and a bullet or unordered list. To create a numbered list, start each line with a number followed by a full stop or period, then followed by a space. After that, write whatever you want for that row. So I'm just going to go below this, I'm just going to put 1 full stop, and then I'm going to paste some text in. It just says numbered list item 1, and you can see in the preview you've got a numbered list. Now to create another line, you would typically do the same, except with VS Code it picks up on it, so it's already taken care of that for me. I just paste in another bit of text, change the number, there we go. I'll just finish that list off, there we go. Now if you want to create a numbered sublist, you can do so by just going here, and then as it says 2 there, if I just press tab, it'll then create a new list underneath it. I'll paste in a bit of text. To do that yourself, you just basically create a new line, tab in, put the number, and then whatever you want in afterwards. And the same goes again if you want to create another line. You see we've got another sublist item there. Now to do a bullet list, start the line with a dash followed by a space. Then enter the text you want after that. I'm just going to paste some in. As you see, we've got a bullet list item in the preview. To add another line, it's basically the same thing again. Just start the line with a dash and a space, put whatever you want in, and there's your new bullet list item. And if you want to do a sublist, again, it's basically just like you did with a numbered list. Just do a tab in, put a dash, then a space, then put whatever text you want in afterwards. And I'll just put another line in just for the sake of it, and there you go. And there's the two list types that are supported by Markdown. With lists covered, let's move on to adding a block quote. These are added by adding a greater than or right chevron followed by a space and then the text you want to quote. For example, I'll put a block of text here, then I'm just going to do greater than and then space. It might not be the easiest thing to see, but in the preview you can see that it's got a greyish box around it, which implies that it's a block quote. Now you can see that the second line isn't on its own line in the block quote. If you want to do that, it needs to be treated as a separate paragraph. And to do that, you need to create a new line, put a greater than or right chevron, don't put a space there, and then on that line, put another greater than or right chevron and a space, and it'll format that as an extra paragraph in that block quote. Just make sure that you got an empty line both before and after the quote. Now, if you wanted to do a nested block quote, you can do that by using 2 chevrons instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that one out there, and then I'm going to put another chevron there. And you can see that in the preview, this is now a block quote within a block quote. So we've got a nested block quote there. Next, let's move on to looking at tables. Tables are one of the more difficult things to do in Markdown, but once you've done it a few times, you'll get the hang of it. To define a table, start with a pipe followed by a space. The first row of a table is for the column names. Enter the column name. In this case, I'll just use first name followed by a space. For the next column, I'll do the same but with a different column name. And again, I'll add a third column with age for the name. Finally, I'll add another pipe to indicate the end of the column heading row. Now, in the preview, it hasn't rendered as a table. What we need to do is add another row which will have some dashes in. This will indicate that this is a table. To do that, I'll add a new line directly below the column name row and start it with a pipe again. After that, add a space and at least 3 dashes followed by another space. Then repeat that for each column. In this case, I'll do it 2 more times. Then I'll add another pipe to finish that row. The preview has rendered the table and the rows for the values can now be added. This follows the same format as the column name row. Start a new line with a pipe, followed by a space, and then the value, and then another space. Repeat that for the next 2 columns and add a pipe at the end to finish that row off. I'll just quickly add one more row. This time I'm going to leave the age empty. You can do that just by leaving a space between the 2 pipes, so there's nothing there. As you can see in the preview, there's the completed table. Now, the default alignment for the value rows is left. If you want to change that, go to the row with the dashes in and then the column which you want to change. In this case, I want the age to align to the right. To do that, add a colon to the end of the dashes. You can see in the preview that that's now aligned to the right. To center it, add a colon to both the start and the end of the dashes. As I've already got one at the end, I'll just put one at the beginning, and you can see that's now aligned to the center. To align it to the left, in case the Markdown processor defaults to something else, you just need to have a colon at the beginning. So I'll just delete that one at the end. You can see that's now aligned to the left. Be aware though that this can only be done for the entire column, and it doesn't change the alignment of the column names. They will always be center or whatever the Markdown processor is set to. Now this does look a little bit messy, so if you want to, you can add more dashes in to align the columns a little bit more, so it's a little bit more readable. You can see that those rows are aligned with each other. You can also do it with the values as well by just adding some additional spaces. And that just makes it look a little bit more readable. The only thing you would have to do is when something goes a little bit bigger than what you've already got set, you just need to add some more dashes or some more spaces depending upon what you're changing. With that marathon of a topic covered, let's move on to emojis. Adding an emoji for the most part is as simple as adding one through the emoji picker for your operating system. For example, I'll just put a smiley face emoji here. There we go, nice and simple. Now, some websites have their own built-in emojis that are not part of the default set that's available on nearly all operating systems, so these need to be added differently. For example, to add an iPhone emoji on GitHub, I would need to use :iPhone:. In the preview, that won't show as an emoji, but if I uploaded it to GitHub, it will. Moving on from emojis, if you want to add a horizontal line in your document to break up a couple of sections, you can do that by creating a new line and putting in a minimum of 3 dashes, underscores, or asterisks. Only use one of these for that line. So I'm going to do it here. Make sure to leave a line both below and above it. So I'll just add a couple of lines there. I can then just do 3 dashes. You can see we've got a horizontal line there, 3 underscores, and 3 asterisks. There we go. You can use any of them, like I said. Probably best just to standardize on which one you want to use. If I mix them, so let's just go dash dash underscore, it doesn't format it as a horizontal line. Next up, let's have a look at code blocks. A code block is used to make a piece of code for a programming language stand out. I'll just scroll down a little bit, put a new line, and then I'll just paste in some Python code. All this does is just takes 2 numbers that are stored as variables and then just adds the 2 together and prints out the result. To turn that into a code block, add a line above the code and then 3 backticks. Now these are not to be confused with apostrophes, they are different. Then go to the last line, put another line in, and then put another 3 backticks. You can see that that code is now in a block of its own. If you want to color code it, go back to the line with the first set of backticks, add a space, and then enter the programming language that the code was written in. In this example, it's Python, so I'll just type Python. As you can see in the preview, there's now some color applied. As for what colors are used, that will just basically boil down to whatever the Markdown processor decides. Another option for code formatting is to do it inline. To do that, you just use 1 backtick at the beginning of the code and then another one at the end. I've just pasted this block of text in, and what I'm going to do, where it says print, I'm going to put a backtick, and then just before the full stop or period, I'm going to put another backtick, and as you can see in the preview, that piece of text has now been put into its own code block. Again, the color will be set by the Markdown processor and you can't change it. With code blocks out of the way, I'm going to move on to the last part that I want to cover, and that's creating a table of contents. What I would suggest is to use the Markdown editor to auto-generate that for you. For VS Code, I'll just go to the title header, add a couple of rows below it, and then go to search and command box, select show and run commands, and then Markdown all in one, create table of contents. Now there's not a lot there, so if I add another couple of headers for example, I'll put one here for the sake of it. When I save it, it then updates the actual table of contents. Just delete that row, don't need it. Now all it is just a basic bullet list with a bunch of links. What it also does is indents each of them, so we've got sub lists when it goes into a different kind of header. So if I put another header here and then save it, we can see another level has been added. Now if you wanted to, you could do it manually, but doing it via the editor's functionality makes life a lot easier for yourself. And that's everything I wanted to cover in this introduction to Markdown. If you got value from this video, please like the video and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.